Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tucker and Crowley Report, part of News Now and the Belmont Journal. I'm joined by Franklin Tucker, editor of the Belmontonian. I'm Mike Crowley, and we also have a special guest with us today, Mark Elliott. Mark is a Midwest radio executive. How are you, Mark?
Boy, that sounds like a fancy title to me. I'm doing great, Mike. Franklin, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Well, are you related to anybody here?
No, there's no relation at all. It's all just a claim.
All right. So let me ask you, Mark, given your expertise and experience, how's the radio business changing in the Midwest or even nationally?
It is really a national trend right now. There's a lot of people who say radio's dead, video killed the radio star or whatever. But 80 to 85% of America still listens to the radio at least one time a week. And audio advertising, as pictured in as documented in the recent issue of Ad Age, combined live radio broadcast combined with podcasting is a significantly cost-effective way to market your product. So radio and audio entertainment isn't going anywhere. We're just dealing with the technology of online radio stations, of internet broadcasting, and of the attempt by people like Tesla, not to bring somebody up, who thinks they want to get rid of AM radios in cars. AM radio will not leave the national scene at any time soon, primarily because the government currently uses AM radio stations in the EAS alerts for national emergencies. And there is a Save AM Radio Act currently being introduced in both the Senate and the House with bipartisan support. So radio as it exists isn't going to change that much for the average radio user. However, you've got, instead of just 4 or 5 or 6 choices to listen to Fleetwood Mac songs, now you have 10,000. And 9,995 of them are online.
If I could ask you a follow-up about this, a lot of folks listen to audio podcasts,
yep.
And for many people, this is replaced listening to the radio. Let me ask you about where this segment of the audio experience is going.
Podcasts have become a really nice tool to do niche type of audio programming. 3 people sitting around a table talking about things going on in a small town in Massachusetts, for example. Oh, that sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar.
The problem with podcasting is it was introduced as a free medium. A free medium has to be supported by advertising. When there's 10,000 possible podcasts today, how do you market it? How do you market it to both listeners and advertisers? You're seeing a big pullback on podcasts right now to where there are fewer of them. Because, anybody can start a podcast, but will anyone listen to a podcast? I think it's still a valuable tool. We do some podcasting with being able to allow some of the radio that's on some of my client stations on an on-demand basis. Just like you've got on-demand video on cable and other TV providers. And I think it's going to be around for a while. Just figuring how to support it financially is the question.
And maybe this is part of the reason, too, why NPR has been pulling back on some of its podcast offerings.
NPR's in financial difficulty because they went big, and they're still primarily supported by advertising. They don't call it advertising, but it is advertising and marketing and support from major organizations and products that want to sell to the public. And when that revenue went down, they had to cut back.
Let me just talk a little about, radio here. We don't have the battling radio stations. Rush Limbaugh was never really big around these parts.
That's not a surprise.
So here it's, you have your NPR, you have your radio stations, you have, 2 classical music stations, and it's rather, there's no controversy. There's no one spitting at anybody right now. So what's it like in Ohio? Is that the same thing here?
It's the same everywhere because radio listening has become very niche. You're not listening to Dan Bongino, really the major replacement for Rush Limbaugh, unless you believe in what he's saying. There's nobody listening to him. One of the things that I will give Rush Limbaugh a ton of credit for is that he encouraged people who disagreed with him to listen to him. He encouraged them to call his show. He encouraged that type of confrontation to get attention for himself. Mm-hmm. Nobody does that anymore. He was one of the best at it. Whether you agreed or disagreed, people listened to him because they want to know what he was going to say.
Right.
I know exactly, and I don't want to pick on one individual person. I know exactly what Dan Bongino is going to say today, on Monday, next Monday, and a year from Monday from now, because it's the same thing over and over again.
Most people don't know who he is.
That's true. He was the guy that replaced Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
That's the easiest way to say it.
The only thing I know is that he still hasn't won an election.
Dan Bongino or Rush Limbaugh?
Dan.
Well, speaking of elections, I did want to ask you about what's happening in Ohio.
I knew that was coming. So Ohio has made every attempt to back up. Ohio has a fairly, what's the right way? Easy way to amend the state constitution. And it's not really easy, but it's available to residents of the state to amend the Constitution. We can also pass laws. However, the way it's written, the legislature can throw them out the next day. But they can't do that with a constitutional amendment. So over the last 10 years, there have been 2 constitutional amendments to change the way the state is redistricted. In both cases, the major party has ignored them. 7 times the state Supreme Court has said you can't do it that way, but they got a federal court to allow it. So Ohio is now a one-party state with a supermajority in both legislatures and every major state office held by a Republican. Mm-hmm. A year ago, this particular legislature said, we have 3 elections a year. We don't need them. We only need 2. So they passed a law to eliminate the August special elections. Oh, Roe v. Wade happens. State of Ohio gets enough signatures to get a ballot proposal this November to create a constitutional amendment to put the Roe v. Wade provisions into the state constitution. Mm. The state legislature goes, we can't do that. And so they pass a law to initiate an August election to change the way constitutional amendments are done. It's so clearly power grabs. This is all about power and imposing your will. One of my concerns about politics nationwide, and certainly in the state of Ohio, we don't have people who want to govern. We have people that want to impose their will on the other side. And it's unfair, it is illegal, and it's frightening to me. And I didn't realize how bad it was till I came out here for a week and I get to hear about how other people in the country think about the state of Ohio. It's not a red state. It is a purple state. But when you
never would have known that.
Yeah, but when to pronounce it the way Franklin pronounces it, gerrymander the state legislature, you get a supermajority from in both houses, and it's wrong, and I don't know how to fix it.
And not only do you see it there, but you see it in Wisconsin and North Carolina. It's happening all across the country.
But there's certain signs. You see the Jacksonville mayor. You see the Colorado Springs mayor. You see places where Republicans have primarily won. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this August election. It's a one-issue election to change the way the Ohio Constitution is amended to stop the change in November. They're anticipating a 30% turnout in an August election. They can't find booth workers. They can't find voting booth workers. It's going to be a disaster. I mean, whether it's a disaster or not, I don't know. But certainly there's going to be enough people to try to generate the vote to turn this down. Okay. And to give these people a loss, because they haven't lost yet, and they need to lose something, in my mind. Without discussing the politics side of it, I don't care what side of it you're on. Don't change the rules just because you don't like the rules. Mm-hmm. It's duplicitous to say we don't need the election today. Oh, but a year from now it serves our purposes. It's ridiculous.
Now, how is that? Now, what's the radio landscape there? Is there as many pro-Republican radio stations as there are pro-Democratic or pro-liberal?
Unfortunately, radio talk, which is really the politics basis, there's no pro-liberal radio broadcasts anymore. And I'm not sure why. There was one at one time, if you remember the Air America, which attempted to compete. It was executed improperly. It just wasn't done right from the beginning. So talk radio is basically Republican radio these days, and that's just the way that it is. It doesn't have any impact though, because it's doing nothing to increase the tent. Right. There's no tent invitations. It's the same people saying the same things to each other over and over. So I'm not sure that radio has any kind of impact from a political standpoint to change anything of the way it is right now. And that's talking to a small percentage of the people.
Well, Mark, it's all very interesting, and we appreciate talking.
Well, can I get at least a plug in the fact that we tied the New England Revolution this a couple of weeks ago, because the Columbus Crew and my excitement about soccer. If you'd have told me 20 years ago, I'd be excited about a game that ends 0-0 or 0-0, and I told you were crazy. But you've got one of the best soccer teams in the league right now.
And no one notices it.
And it's amazing how nobody wants to talk about it.
Because no one cares.
Columbus has built a new stadium with basically private money, sells 20,000 plus tickets for every game. It was a fan-based movement, because they wanted to move the team 4 years ago. And they recruited somebody to buy it. They got a local partnership involved. And now 20,000 people all show up at the same place to become soccer hooligans, just like me. Which is why I'm concerned about facial recognition anywhere. To be honest with you.
We have an ultra here. see that's the problem with USA soccer. It's if you compare it to if I watch soccer every weekend and on whenever the Champions League is happening or World Cup, and I see the American version with New England Revolution or the LA, whatever they are now, the Galaxy. I'm looking at second division soccer.
It's third division soccer, really. Compared to the Premier League, it's third division soccer. And nobody's going to fault you on that.
Yeah.
But it's getting better all the time. You look at the number of Americans who are playing in the Premier League, playing in La Liga, playing in League One.
Or in the MLS.
Yeah. But Americans are playing overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an increasing number of them coming out of America and playing in the big leagues.
Right.
And so that can only make American soccer better all the way around.
Yeah, we had one very good soccer player from Arlington who went to Atlanta and won a championship there. So
and now you realize that the most impactful soccer team in America today is Wrexham. So that's the team that's made the most impact on soccer fans in America. It's Wrexham. And they're coming to America to play at least 2 matches, I understand.
This summer.
Even more this summer. So I got to figure out a way to go see those.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had fun.
You're welcome to sit in as we turn to the local Belmont news.
I'm going to turn my camera off and just stare at you guys.
All right. All right. So Franklin Town Meeting segment B is coming up. What can you tell us?
Well, there could be some excitement this year. Usually segment B, which is, spending millions upon millions of dollars every year. It usually passes, within a few seconds. It's always little amendments that in segment A.
People often ask questions, so it can be a process that takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, but usually it doesn't. And the reason for that is, of course, our budget process is so open. It's so transparent. So transparent. We start in September. It goes through a very public process. People are not surprised when we go to town meeting, unlike other town meetings across the state where you're just shocked to see what the budget is. Belmont has always had, or in the last 10 years, have had a very open and public process. So it's not going to shock anybody to see what's going to be presented as a budget. But this year,
will there be anything shocking, Franklin?
Yeah, there could be a little bit. There could be a surprise, and I think there is a talk around town has been that there is going to be an amendment to the budget, and it'll be the school budget.
All right.
And it will be concerning special ed, and it won't be actually setting something up with special ed. That will have to take a year to construct, basically. And what it is going to is present money to a consultant to construct a new special ed, how to run special ed in this town, which means it's basically there to reduce the number of children who have to go out of district to be educated, which means they need very much more help in terms of being educated in the special ed.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about this. Elizabeth Dion, our newest select board member, during her campaign, of course, she was unchallenged, but she did talk a great deal about the need to do more of our special ed programming in district because it's good for the kids. Families want their kids to be in Belmont, and also, it saves money. because these outplacements are tremendously expensive.
And you don't know, and unlike other line items, special ed can change on a dime. You could go from something that is going up by 2%. You have an influx of children who need special ed services, and it skyrockets. And the state can only give you, and the state it doesn't really give you that a lot of protection. I mean, they do have a circuit breaker, but it doesn't really pay what you really need. And talking about Elizabeth Dion, her youngest child needed that special ed, so she understands it, and she understands also the finance because she worked as an attorney for special ed programming in the state. So yeah, she has a good idea what that is.
Special ed and doing more in district also attracted attention during the campaign for the school committee, and there has been considerable discussion on the school committee. Some big questions are, what will this amendment actually include in total, and will it get support? So.
As you know, any kind of town meeting amendment, it's a surprise sometimes what will be supported and what won't be supported. If you're doing this as a coalition, if you have a number of people who are on the school committee, maybe a few members on the school committee, people who are well regarded in the town, this could pass. As long as it's not a great amount of money. If it's like over $500,000, you can forget it. It won't pass. Right. But I mean, it's just a truthful statement. I think the big issue is they're going to say, well, we'll pass this. If we pass a $60,000, amendment, how much is this going to cost us in next fiscal year? Is this going to cost, if we put $60,000, that's great. But if it's going to cost us $6 million to run this new program, that might be a detriment.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Not a lot of information available just yet. Let's turn to high school rugby, Franklin.
Mm-hmm. Well, high school rugby, I've never seen the Belmont rugby. I've been following Belmont rugby for 13 years now. I think the only person.
That's all.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. I followed them when they won their first Division I championship long time ago. I've never seen a better Belmont high school rugby team. They not only, but most Belmont rugby teams, they feast on being just more knowledgeable about the game because they usually meet these big, strong, bigger teams, but they just use finesse and just knowing how to play a great game of rugby to defeat them. This year we have the big, strong, nasty guys. So now we're pushing around people. Our great rivalry is with BC High. We fought them in last year's state championship. Turned out that we basically beat them up. We just ran over them, and it was just a wonderful game to see. Belmont played a very highly professional game. We're using kicking as an offensive mode. Okay. Yeah, and they were just so much better. Mm-hmm. And next week, they won that game. I think it was 46-10. And what they're going to do now is they're going to meet St. John's Prep, which is another rival. They're mean and nasty, and they like to be chippy. So this is going to be at Harris Field on Thursday. I hope everybody can come to the game. It's going to be a classic, to say the least.
All right. Well, sounds good. Now, I understand Chenery is going to be participating in a quiz bowl.
That not only did they participate, they won the quiz bowl.
Oh, they won the quiz bowl.
They flew into Chicago and stayed at the airport there. Stayed at the airport with 159 other teams from across the country.
All right.
And they in the preliminary rounds, I think they went 5-1. They lost a very close one to a team from Georgia. Then what happened is they just won the rest of their matches. I've been trying to email their teacher to try to get them to come online so we could have some fun with them. But let's just name the team. And okay. It's Andrew Gow, Gregory Zendovich, Fergus Williams, and Jeffrey Wu. And Andrew Gow was one of the all-stars of that tournament. I don't know if they won a lot of money. I'd probably just won a trophy, but they do have the chance to say that they are the national champions. So it's not the first time. Remember,
Okay.
we had the national high school economics team champion just a few years ago, beating a team from Santa Clara, California, and that was in New York City.
All right. Well, good for our team from Chenery. All right. We'll just close with if you were looking forward to Town Day, it's been postponed until the fall because of rain. So stay tuned and be sure to be here in the fall.
And as you know, Mike, we've had fall. We had a recent fall Town Day. I think that was in 21 because of the pandemic. We also had a postponement back in 2018. So that's not unusual for this to happen. It's still fun in the fall. It's a lot cooler.
All right. So it'll be cool. Thank you, Franklin. And you can see more of Franklin's reporting at belmontonian.com. Be sure to watch us next time, and we'll see you then. Thank you.